to another edition of the Daily Deuce. I'm Gary Graves from just outside Louisville, Kentucky, and in Maryland, the great state, the Bohemian state. My good friend, longtime colleague, John Webster. How you doing?
Hey Gary, doing real good, man. Beautiful day here in Maryland. Sunshine, no rain today, but rain coming this weekend. Hey man,
Yeah.
let's say hey to John Pitt. John Pitt, how you doing, man?
Doing pretty good, guys.
Hey, fellas, we're in that glorious time of year, March Madness. Whether it's warm or cold, we get to watch basketball, men's and women's, and we're going to talk about both. But first, let's talk about the men. Okay, next week is when most of the Power Five conferences will be having their conference tournaments. Some of the smaller leagues are having theirs this week. But right now, Houston is number one. I think a lot of people think the line's going to go through them, but I'll tell you, there are a lot of contenders, and the one that I'm going to toot the horn for probably right now until they get to their conference tournament, the Tennessee Volunteers, currently number 5. They host number 15 Kentucky on Saturday. The Volunteers they've clinched the SEC regular season title, but they're starting to have that look. And as we've talked about Rick Barnes and some of his other teams, they look like they're playing their best ball at a time they need to. And they've won 6 in a row. And I think when we talked before about Houston and defense, they're the best defensive team in the country. But is that going to carry them to a title?
Hey, Gary, it's going to be really interesting like any other year. It's going to be a wide open NCAA tournament. It's funny. Tennessee's in the SEC, and they're the only one that play defense in the SEC. Nobody else seems to be able to play any defense. Watched them
Yeah.
last night. They stifled South Carolina and beat them, I think it was 66-59. Tennessee's a really tough team. I think they have more offense than Houston. Houston is without a doubt the number one team and probably the best defensive team in the country. But I just don't know if they have enough offensive firepower. UConn took out Marquette last night. That was a big win for them at Marquette. So they beat Marquette 2 times this year. But it's always a scary time when you get to the tournament. The obvious teams that you see, Houston, UConn, Tennessee, they looking at you right dead in your face. But then you got some teams that sneak up on you, like an Iowa State, like a Baylor, like a Kansas,
Well, I don't know
Arizona.
about Kansas right now. Kansas is struggling, but I understand your point because
Yeah.
they're always going to be there.
McCullers is supposed to be coming back for the tournament. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to change how they're going to be. ACC is down this year. The 2 teams in the ACC, in my opinion, are Duke and Carolina. That's
Carolina,
yeah,
but I
that's the
wouldn't
2
look
best.
past Carolina at all.
Yeah, but it's going to be interesting, Gary. It's going to be must watch TV. I can't wait to sit in front of my TV and watch a bunch of games on that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Like we've talked about before with some teams and really, what gets you to a championship. Uh, UConn proved last year, how much defense matters. Houston is proving right now how much defense matters. And, of course, both of us, we like Kelvin Sampson. So I think, any team he coaches, you can't discount. Um, they just got to find just that kind of offense because, I mean, I covered a game late last night with Tennessee and Vanderbilt, and excuse me, with Kentucky and Vanderbilt. Man, I need some coffee. But anyway, with Kentucky, in 3 of the last 4 games, they've scored at least 93 points, and they've scored 100 twice. And one of those games where they scored 100, I mean, they hung like 115 on Alabama, which got destroyed by Florida the other night, which hung 100 on them. So that's just how wild it is. Now, I have said before about Kentucky, they're fun to watch. Yeah, it's great to see all those freshmen do the things that they can do, and of course, the one senior, Antonio Reeves, who's just been steady all season for them. But John, when you get to the tournament, as nice as it is to have all those 100-point games, you're not going to score 100 points against some of these teams, especially, let's just say you run up on a mid-major that specializes in defense, that can figure out a way to slow down a Tennessee or a Kentucky or an Alabama, or, well, for that matter, maybe even a UConn. That's the thing. It's like, if you're an offensive team, how do you beat a defensive team? And if you're a defensive team, how do you find enough offense to get past, say, a fast-paced offensive team?
Well, my thing is, you mentioned a mid-major, and there's a mid-major that sticks out in my mind that I think is going to be very dangerous. Coached by Dusty May, Florida Atlantic. I think they're going to give people some problems. They've moved into a new conference this year and are in first place in that conference or up top. So I think they're going to be very hard to beat. Tennessee, I think, is probably the most complete team in the SEC, offense and defense. A SEC team I would not forget about, that I think they're going to, it all comes down to bracketing. If you get in the right bracket, that's what it comes down to. But I wouldn't overlook Bruce Pearl and Auburn. They could do some things. Alabama, in my opinion, is a track meet team. Get them in the right situation, they're going to struggle and they're going to probably lose. Same with, I hate to say it because it's your beloved state, Kentucky. You get them in the right bracket.
Okay.
You get them in the right bracket. I don't think they can go but so far, because what I've seen with both Kentucky and Alabama this year, they can put some points up, but they can't stop anybody. The other night, I'm watching a little bit of the Florida Alabama game. At one point, it was 99-80, and it's you can't. You got to be able to put some defense on somebody, and I just think the teams that can play defense and have some offense are going to be the teams that are going to give you problems. And the thing you also got to keep in mind now, Gary, today's game is a little bit different with these mid-majors. These mid-majors, in my opinion, play really well because they have players that stick around for 2, 3, and sometimes 4 years of school. A lot of these schools like a Duke, a Carolina, or Auburn, they're one and dones, 2 years at the most. They're young kids, and they're going against guys that have been playing college ball 3 and 4 years, and a couple of them 5 years.
Yeah.
So
San Diego State is a team that comes to mind, based off of last year.
Yeah, and they're
ranked
tough.
this year.
And they're still tough. Yeah, still tough. So I just hope we don't have a San Diego State-Houston game. That's going to be like watching paint dry, so.
Yeah. The thing I love about San Diego State, and I remember this from last year when they played Alabama in the Sweet 16, and Alabama, they were rolling. They had a squad that I really thought could get to the Final Four, and San Diego State comes out on the floor, and John, I'll just say this because both of us as older guys can relate. When they came out on the floor, they looked like that older guy rec team, guys that get together once or twice a week, play some ball, and it was like they were going against kids. I mean, if there was ever a situation where it was men versus boys, that was it. And San Diego State knew it. And in a sense, Alabama knew it, and they thought, well, we can run past these older guys. And within 5 minutes, Alabama, I think, was kind of shell-shocked. They really were. It wasn't, blowout by any stretch, but it was a physical game, and that's something that Alabama wasn't used to. That's the thing that kind of scares me for some of the Power 5 teams, as you alluded to, with the one and dones, that when you run up against a mid-major, and of course, I don't know if we can call Creighton a mid-major because they play in the Big East, but that's another team that's kind of scary because they have a good mix of offense and defense as well. And I think it was right after one of our shows where I had been touting UConn as the team to beat. Creighton goes out and beats them by like 20 something points. So, so much for what I know. It's just, to your point about seeding and placement, that really matters. That's the concern around here with Kentucky. Where do they put them? Because, 2 years ago, St. Peter's was not scared of them. St. Peter's was a 15, and they took the game to Kentucky. It went to overtime, and then they took it to Kentucky again. And they remember that year they went all the way to the Elite Eight. It's I always say that the great thing about the NCAA tournament is that it does level the playing field in a lot of ways. Yes, the Power Five or Power Six, however you want to describe it, yeah, those teams tend to come out on top, but the mid majors, the gang of five, group of five, as they call them, those are the ones that always seem to have a way to really just kind of tighten up the field and let folks know we're here too. And they play defense, which I do think really, really matters at this time of year.
You're right, Gary. You got to be able to play both ends of the court. And I think it's going to be a very, very exciting tournament.
Yep. And in closing, the only thing I'm just going to say is the great thing about conference tournaments is that the cream rises to the top, because you've got to play, even if you're a favorite, you got to play 3 days in a row. And at some point, you're going to roll a dud out there unless you're really, really good.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Absolutely agreed.
Yeah. Now, moving to the women's side, South Carolina unbeaten. I think they've won like 28 in a row, 29 in a row. Number one team, number one seed in the SEC. They've changed their whole lineup. A lot of things roll through the senior. Sorry about that. A lot of things roll through the senior Camila Cardoso, who has missed 3 or 4 games because she's playing with the Brazilian national team, but they didn't miss a beat. Full Wiley, the freshman, she's strong. They've got another balanced roster. So it's hard to pick against South Carolina. What do you think?
They're a tough team. They're well coached with Dawn Staley. Cordoba is the straw that mixes the drink. Mm-hmm. She makes things happen. And I think they are the team to beat. I think this year's tournament, you have even more teams that are going to be tough to deal with. Of course, you have Iowa with Caitlin Clark. Congratulations to her on the scoring record. But I think their team was better last year than they are this year. I think the unique thing with South Carolina's team last year was better as well, in my opinion. But I think this team is more scrappy. I think they will find a way to get it done. That's no disrespect from me about the team last year. Absolutely great team. But I just think this team has a little bit of a more scrappiness to it than the team last year.
Yeah. The thing about South Carolina that, that you and I discussed along with everybody else is that we were surprised that against Iowa, that Dawn Staley didn't seem to make adjustments, as she normally does in a game like that. And what happened with Iowa and Caitlin Clark there. I think this year, from what I've seen, and I've seen them a couple times up close, is that team is somehow, even with all the changeover, that they're deeper. I think she understands she's got a bench that she can go to and really depend on them. And again, the game I covered against Kentucky, where they had three 20-point scorers, and I'm not going to say, oh yeah, well they're playing Kentucky. I was just looking at how they scored. It was just kind of like a steady, pull away. They found each other, and again, this is with Cardoso sitting on the bench watching and chilling. Um, that's what makes them so dangerous this year. They they have had a tendency sometimes to take their eye off the ball, maybe take some possessions off, maybe, take a quarter or two off. But I don't think that's going to happen this year. I think they're very, very strong. I think they're very, very focused. And I think more than anything, Dawn Staley is very, very focused because I think she really feels like, she won't say it, but I really think she feels like she let one slip away last year.
Yeah. She has a very good team. She has a very good shot. I think she's going to have to see LSU at least one more time, maybe two more times. And I think LSU is another team that has to be reckoned with. Last year was, it was a very good game with Carolina and Iowa. Congratulations, as we said last year, to Iowa. It was a great game. It's unfortunate somebody had to lose, but that's what happens in sports. I still look at some of these other teams that are going to be in this bracket this year. You look at NC State and Virginia Tech. They're coming out of the ACC. They're going to be tough to deal with. Gino Auriemma. There's no doubt. There should be no doubt in anybody's mind, if there ever was, of how good of a coach he is. Fudd was out this year. Beckers, was leading the way. And he still got 24, 25 wins out of that team. Down year for UConn, but great job with that team. They they will be a team you have to reckon with in the tournament as well. Just like on the men's side, it's all about matchups and where you end up in a bracket. You look out west with Stanford, UCLA, and let's talk about even USC. Do you really want to see Juju Watkins in the tournament?
Or Notre Dame for that matter. From the
Notre
ACC.
Dame and with Hidalgo, and think about this with Notre Dame. Coach Notre Dame is has done a great job. Olivia Miles is out with a torn up knee. And they're really a year away, to be honest with you, Gary. This is not it was supposed to be their year. It's supposed to be next year. And she has done an absolutely positively wonderful job with Notre Dame. And do you really want to play them? I mean, Notre Dame beat Louisville the other week. They're playing really well. So it's a wide open tournament, wide open. And I mentioned briefly, and I have to give them more than a brief mention, LSU. They are going to be somebody that you're going to have to deal with. Angel Reese and the other young lady down low that transferred in, they're tough. They're tough. And I'm going
and Haley
to
Van Lith, who transferred in from Louisville.
They're going to be tough. And I'm just as much as on the men's side, I enjoy watching the women's game as well. And I just can't wait, man. I just can't wait.
Yeah. I'm going to wade into this subject about the women's game, and I'll just say this: there are people that really want to trash the women's game and say, "Oh, well, it's too slow. It's not this, it's not that." People are really, really missing a treat with the women's game, I believe, because it can be fast paced, it can be defensive. But the thing I think that's always been impressive to me is just the emphasis on fundamentals and working the ball around, playing defense, playing zone defense, playing matchup zone defense, man to man. I mean, all kinds of things. And it's just fun to watch that. And of course, it's also fun to see Caitlin Clark step across the midcourt line and toss one up. What I'm saying is, for people that say, well, it's not the same as the men's game. Well, of course, it's not supposed to be. but it's
Correct.
fun to watch. And if you really like basketball, and for all the complaints that people have about the men's game, well, there's no defense being played. I mean, I said that okay, fine. If you want to see defense, look at the women's game. Look at how teams like South Carolina and UConn, Ohio State, who we didn't mention as a possible contender, look at how they play. Um, Baylor, USC. Yeah, for all the talk about Juju Watson and her offense, she plays some pretty daggone good defense too. And having seen Hannah Hidalgo twice, and just watch how that young woman she just has an instinct for the ball, unlike anything I've seen. Well, with the exception of Olivia Miles, and just like you said, next year, Niall Ivy is going to have a strong team in the ACC. Virginia Tech, they're going to lose quite a few players, and including Elizabeth Kitley. And I think the power will shift a little bit. A lot just depends on say what teams like NC State and Louisville do in terms of recruiting, especially in the NIL era. But right now, I would put Notre Dame up there as the way too early favorite for next year. And I'm talking about a favorite for a national title as well.
I hope you're right, Gary. I really hope you're right about that. It would warm my heart to see another team from South Bend, which we all know is the most complete academic athletic institution in the country. So it would warm my heart to see them in a national championship. Did I mention they won the men's lacrosse championship? So I'm just saying, Gary.
This ad paid for by John Webster and John Webster only. Well, this is the fun part of the year, and for all that we love to talk about, with our favorite schools, me, Maryland, Louisville, Kentucky, Notre Dame, and Notre Dame, that when we get into conference tournaments, especially some of these mid-majors, that's where I think you're going to see some of the most fun basketball leading up to that this week. So, folks, watch all the college basketball you can, because it's going to be on well into the wee hours of the morning. Trust me on this one. And you're going to wake up, bleary-eyed in the morning, and you're going to feel fulfilled. Right, John?
Man, I can't wait, man. I absolutely enjoy, like I said, the men's and the women's games. You all need to watch them, check them out. Get your brackets together. These brackets will be coming out. If you need some help with brackets, you can always talk to my wife. She seems to win the Webster bracket competition almost every year. So
that is true. It is. I want to know her method. Well, y'all have the grand doggy pick out teams, don't you?
Yeah, if he barks for them, that means they'll win.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I see you all probably put a treat down, for one of those teams that you like, right?
Well, it would be a leprechaun treat, Gary. You know that. It would just be a Notre Dame treat.
They make those. Well, wait a minute. Of course, if anybody knows that, you would.
Hey, everybody, watch some sports. Watch college basketball. Watch the NBA. You got spring training coming with baseball. It's already in session. But above all else, come back and see us again next week. Take care. See you again soon.